right, let's see, what is on the agenda for today? We're talking about my favorite superhero tropes. Interesting, you know, that sounds like a job for Supergirl. Hey guys, Supergirl here on my friend Cassie's YouTube channel. And I am here today to talk to you about my friend Cassie's top 5 favorite superhero tropes. In descending order leading up to my very top favorite superhero trope, let's get started. Number 5 is temporary, inconvenient superpowers used to learn a lesson. Now this trope is the least like superhero-ish of all the tropes on this list because it's generally not used in like a superhero story kind of thing. Like you're not really gonna see this trope often in something like Supergirl or Superman or Batman or whatever. It's more commonly used in movies like What Women Want, in which Mel Gibson is granted the ability to hear all the thoughts of women around him, and it's kind of a tool that is, or a gift I guess, that is given to him to help him learn a lesson and grow as a character. Another example of this trope would be the movie Ghost Town, in which Ricky Gervais's character is granted the ability to see the ghosts around him, and it kind of teaches him a lesson about, honestly, I don't really remember exactly what that movie's about. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I know that he was a very arrogant person and kind of thought very highly of himself, and I know that something about the ghosts definitely helped him grow as a character, but I can't remember how so. Anyway, this is a trope that I really enjoy. It's not specific to the like superhero genre of film or books, but it is a trope that is related to having superpowers. Number 4 is Misfit Heroes. A great example of this trope would be the Guardians of the Galaxy, one of my favorite Marvel movies. There's something really fun about a group of heroes that are kind of lacking in some areas of skill. It just makes it more fun to watch, I think, than I've always had a problem, ironically, with Superman because he's so perfect and his powers are so all-encompassing that it seems like it's kind of hard to relate to him sometimes on a human level. But with Misfit Heroes, it's easier to see some of their humanity and their failures and where they're struggling as characters, and it also makes it, I think, easier and maybe more satisfying to watch their character arc unfold as these misfits kind of grow into their powers or their abilities and learn how to hone their craft better and end up saving the day in the end because of all of the ways that they've grown as a character throughout the story. Trope number 3 is similar, and that is anti-heroes. Obviously, the classic example of this would be Deadpool, who's one of my favorites. Anti-heroes can be really fun to watch because they kind of encompass a lot of the qualities that we love to see in both heroes and villains. It's a really interesting emotional journey to put an audience through, whether it's a reader or a viewer of a movie or a television show, to introduce them to a character that they're supposed to root for who isn't necessarily a very good person, and maybe their motivations throughout the entire story aren't very noble, but yet they're accomplishing something that is noble and that we can root for, but maybe it's sort of reluctant. It kind of gives the viewer a little war within themselves to decide if they actually should be rooting for this character or not. And I just think it's really fun. Trope number 4 is superheroes using their abilities to do normal everyday things. This is absolutely one of my favorite tropes in any superhero stories, and I really, really wish they would do it more often because I don't see it nearly as much as I would like to. I don't know why, but I just really love seeing superheroes do everyday average things and using their powers to help them because it just makes them seem more real as characters instead of just being this picture of like, oh, super guy who saves the day and does all this awesome stuff. But it's like, okay, but what about when he's just a normal person? A really great example of this is my all-time favorite superhero story in the world, which is the TV series Smallville. This series does this a lot because it follows Clark Kent as a character sort of as he's growing into his superpowers and first discovering that he is Superman, or that he's going to become Superman in the future. So we get to see a lot of Clark learning about his powers, and since he's not a superhero yet, he's just a teenage boy working on his parents' farm, and he has super strength, so why not use it to help him build fences faster or carry giant bales of hay instead of using a tractor? And I just think it's super fun to see, and I wish that people would do that more in superhero stories, because I feel like if any person had something like super strength, they're not just gonna use it to save lives, they're also going to use it just in their everyday life for convenience purposes, and that just makes a character feel more real and relatable to me. Or any of these abilities that a lot of these I just realized that I did the numbers wrong, because I think I started out with number 5 and I was gonna go in descending order, and then I switched and started going in ascending order. So this is either number 5 or number 1, depending on how you wanna look at it. But it is one of my very favorite tropes in superhero stories, and that is villains with sympathy. Again, an awesome example of this is Smallville. The character of Lex Luthor has so much sympathy and relatability in the story of Smallville. I've never really cared much about Lex Luthor as a character in other like Superman stories I've seen before, like the movies, but in Smallville it's really interesting to see sort of the origin of Clark's powers creating a monster in Lex. Because in the story of Smallville, Lex Luthor and Clark Kent are actually really good friends in the beginning of the story, and as the story progresses and Clark learns more about himself, he starts keeping a lot of secrets from Lex, and Lex becomes sort of obsessed with finding out what Clark is hiding from him. And so it is arguable that maybe Clark Kent keeping all of those secrets from Lex is what actually turned him into his enemy in the first place. And who knows, maybe if Clark had just been upfront and honest with Lex in the first place and told him everything, then maybe Lex would have been his biggest supporter and they just would have continued to be friends. But instead, Clark's distrust of Lex and all of his secrecy put a wedge in their relationship, and it really kind of drove Lex to a point of almost insanity, and sort of created the monster that Clark had to deal with in the future. Another really cool example of this is Thanos from Infinity War. Thanos is a really interesting character because his motivations are so relatable and almost arguably not that terrible, because really Thanos wants to make the world a better place. He is not one of those villains who just is evil and hates humanity and wants to just destroy everything. I can't stand villains that are like that. It's just one of the most boring things you can do, in my opinion, to make a villain just like, I'm just evil and I just want to kill people because it's fun and I like it and I like to destroy things. Unless you're gonna give your villain character like a really interesting backstory of maybe severe abuse that drove them to a point of psychopathy, then that's just not really very interesting to watch. But with Thanos, he is definitely not one of those villains who just likes to see destruction. He sees his plan of destroying half the universe as productive for society in the end. He wants to make the world or the universe a better place. He's just very, very misguided in how he's going about accomplishing that. So props to Marvel for that character, because it's one of the most interesting villains I've seen in a very long time. I really, really enjoyed Infinity War, and Thanos, I've heard someone say that Infinity War was almost like Thanos's origin story, which is really, I think, is an accurate way to describe that movie, and it's really interesting because he's a villain, and we don't usually get a story like that that's the villain's origin story, but it's still filled with a lot of like almost hope and emotion. Like, it's not, like I said, it's not just someone who's evil and wants to destroy everything. And it's just really interesting. It goes back to kind of the anti-hero. You could almost argue that Thanos is more of an anti-hero in his own mind than a villain, because he's doing something really awful, but in his mind, it's for a really good reason. And it just creates like a really strange internal conflict within the viewer of what we're supposed to feel about this bad guy. So those are all of the tropes I have to share with you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and comment below and let me know what your favorite superhero tropes are. These are just a few that came to mind. Obviously there are so many more, but these are kind of the ones that stuck out in my mind as ones that I really enjoy seeing, especially those last two. Those ones are the ones that I like really feel passionately about, and I really want to see so much more of that in stories. So if you're an author out there writing a superhero story, maybe keep that in mind, you know? Maybe toss in some little scenes of your superheroes using their powers for normal everyday activities. And maybe think about writing your villains with more sympathy and more, I guess really more humanity is what I am looking for in villains, because villains who just want to destroy everything because they're evil are just not very realistic characters unless they're just psychopaths, because otherwise people just aren't really like that. They don't really get to that point. There are a lot of really interesting reasons why people become evil and do really, really evil things. And I think it's a little bit of a lazy way out to just declare this person evil and have everything they do be bad, with no real explanation of why they are the way they are. And that's it. I'll see y'all next time and have a great day. Bye. All right, let's see. What's on the agenda for today? Oh, I don't have my microphone on. That's what's on the agenda. The very, very top favorite how am I gonna say that? Starting with, this list will be in descending order leading up to my very, very top 5. No, what the heck am I trying to say? Oh my gosh. Very top favorite superhero trope. Oh my gosh, I can't talk right now. Leading up to my very top favorite, okay. Or maybe they're doing something wrong. Well, no, that doesn't make sense. They sort of have one toe dipped. They sort of have one foot on either side of the fence between heroes and villains, and it's just, yeah, what is fun about it? It's more commonly because in the story of Smallville, Lex Luthor and Clark Kent, oh my gosh, all the time for all kinds of different, oh my gosh, why can't I talk today? This video is a struggle. All right, we did it. We got through it, even though I couldn't talk at all, and it was insane, but it's over now. So, I've been doing this a lot. It's like, I just need you to like hold my cape up. Don't pull on it too hard. Well, not like that. Hold it like on that side. Yeah, like that. Okay, hang on. I'll tell you when to drop it. Now. I don't know if that works, but we'll see.